Evan had always been the kind of kid who couldn't stand still. Even before he learned his alphabet, he learned to move his feet to any beat he heard. His mother liked to say he danced before he walked, and anyone who saw him agreed. He was only 10 years old. But he already had a spark in him, something bright, something bold, something that made people look twice. That spark was shining brighter than ever on the night he finally saw Michael Jackson perform live. The concert hall was huge, filled with people from all walks of life, all buzzing with excitement. Everywhere Evan looked, he saw glittering jackets, fedora hats, glowing signs, and smiling faces. Even though he had watched Michael's videos 100 times, nothing compared to being there in person. The stage lights flickered, the music blasted, and Evan felt like he was floating. Every move Michael made felt magical. The way he glided across the stage, the way he spun without losing balance, the way he seemed to slide on air. It was everything Evan had tried to copy in his bedroom. And even though Evan's attempts weren't perfect, he tried anyway, again and again, because dancing made him feel alive. When the concert ended, Evan was still buzzing with excitement. His parents had surprised him with backstage passes, something they had saved up for, because they knew how much he loved dancing. The pass hung around his neck like a medal, and he kept touching it just to make sure it was real. The backstage area was crowded with fans, dancers, crew members, and people holding merchandise to be signed. Evan held his parents' hands tightly as they walked inside. He felt nervous, but also incredibly excited. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest. Everywhere he looked, people were chatting and laughing, waiting for Michael to come out and greet everyone. Evan stayed close to his parents at first, but his eyes kept drifting around the room. He saw one boy practicing a spin, another girl repeating a small dance step, and a group of adults talking about how amazing the show was. It seemed like everyone was caught up in the thrill of the night. Then, the room shifted. A door opened quietly, and in stepped Michael Jackson himself. He wasn't in a flashy outfit now. Instead, he wore simple clothes, a jacket, a hat, and a warm smile that instantly softened the atmosphere. The chatter died down at first, then rose into excited whispers. Evan felt a wave of warmth rush through him. This was really happening. He was seeing Michael up close. Michael began greeting people one by one. He shook hands, signed autographs, and thanked everyone for coming. He spoke softly, kindly, and with genuine interest in each person he met. Evan watched him in awe, his eyes wide, his heart beating faster, with each step Michael took. When Michael reached Evan's group, Evan almost forgot how to breathe. His parents encouraged him to step forward, and Evan slowly did. Michael smiled at him. "Hey there," he said gently. "Did you enjoy the show?" "Yes," Evan said, trying to keep his voice calm. "It was amazing." "I'm glad," Michael replied. "Do you like music?" "I love music," Evan said. Then, something inside him, something bold and fearless, rose to the surface. "I like dancing too," he added. "I try to dance like you sometimes." Michael chuckled softly, impressed by the little boy's confidence. "That's wonderful. Dancing is all about expression. Do you practice a lot?" Evan nodded. And then, without thinking, the words slipped out of his mouth. "I can dance like you," he said proudly. The room suddenly went quiet. A few people nearby turned their heads, surprised by the kid's bold statement. Some smiled, finding it adorable. Others raised their eyebrows, curious to see how Michael would react. Evan felt his cheeks warm, but he didn't take the words back. Something inside him told him to be brave. Michael didn't look offended or annoyed. Instead, his smile grew a little wider, and his eyes sparkled with amusement. He leaned down slightly to meet Evan's gaze. "You can dance like me?" he repeated gently, as if making sure he heard right. Evan nodded again, his tiny hands curling into nervous fists at his sides. Yes, he said. Michael stood back up slowly and glanced around the room. Everyone was watching now. Some were holding their breath. The moment felt bigger than Evan could explain. He didn't know whether Michael would laugh, or tease him, or simply pat his shoulder and move on. But Michael did something no one expected. Well, he said in a warm, playful tone. The crowd reacted with soft gasps and excited murmurs. Evan's heart skipped a beat. His parents looked at him with wide eyes, unsure if he'd actually take the challenge. But Evan, even with shaking knees, felt something push him forward. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was the love of dancing. Maybe it was both. Michael stepped back a little, giving Evan space. A crew member quickly connected a phone to a speaker and played a soft beat, simple, rhythmic, perfect for freestyle. Michael nodded at Evan, silently encouraging him. At first, Evan stood frozen. His mind raced. What if he messed up? What if he tripped? What if everyone laughed? But then the beat grew louder, filling his ears, and he remembered how dancing always made him feel. It was like taking a deep breath, like letting everything go, like flying without wings. He took one step forward, then another, and suddenly, he was moving. He started with a simple side step, something he had practiced over and over at home. Then he added a spin, a little unsteady, but full of heart. The crowd reacted with gentle cheers. Encouraged, Evan slid his feet across the floor, trying to mimic the glide he had seen Michael do so many times. It wasn't perfect, but the effort was clear. Evan's arms moved with emotion, and his face lit up with joy. He wasn't just dancing. He was letting his passion speak for him. Michael watched him closely, his expression warm and thoughtful. He didn't laugh. He didn't interrupt. He watched with kindness, admiration, and a hint of surprise at the boy's courage. When Evan attempted the moonwalk, the crowd erupted into applause. The move wasn't smooth, but it was bold, and that made it amazing. The room filled with positive energy, cheers, smiles, encouragement. Finally, the beat softened and faded away. Evan finished with a small spin, nearly stumbling but catching himself at the last second. He stood in the center of the room, out of breath, his heart racing, his cheeks warm. The crowd cheered louder, clapping and praising him. Michael stepped forward with a gentle smile and placed a light hand on Evan's shoulder. Evan felt a wave of relief wash over him. The challenge was over. He had actually done it. "You've got a lot of courage," Michael said softly. "And a lot of talent." Evan smiled shyly, unsure what to say. Michael's words felt like a treasure he would keep forever. What happened next would become the beginning of a moment Evan would remember for the rest of his life. A moment that would shape him, inspire him, and stay with him long after that night was over. But for now, as the crowd cheered and Michael stood beside him, Evan felt something simple and powerful. He had dared to dream, and the dream had just begun. The room was still buzzing from Evan's brave little performance, and the warm feeling that filled the air refused to fade. People kept smiling, whispering to each other about the kid who had just danced in front of Michael Jackson. Some were impressed by his confidence. Others were touched by his spirit. But almost everyone felt a soft glow inside, as if they had witnessed something special. Evan stood there, catching his breath, still unsure if he should laugh or hide behind his parents. His legs were a little shaky, and his heart was racing so fast he wondered if everyone could hear it. He looked up at Michael, who was still smiling gently at him. But then something surprising happened. Michael stepped back a little, lifted his hat slightly, and said with a playful tone that made the room brighten even more, "Now, mind if I try?" The words were simple, but the reaction was instant. The whole room gasped lightly, then broke into excited chatter. People exchanged looks of disbelief. as if they couldn't believe what was about to happen. Even Evan's parents widened their eyes, and Evan himself froze for a moment, unsure if he heard correctly. Was Michael really saying he wanted to dance too? Because of him? Evan's heart skipped a full beat. He suddenly felt a mix of excitement, fear, and amazement. But most of all, he felt proud. Something inside him said, "This is going to be a moment I will never forget." The beat started again. This time it was a little stronger, clearer, more rhythmic. A smooth instrumental filled the room, and everyone grew quiet, waiting, watching, wondering what Michael would do. Michael didn't begin with a big move. Instead, he started slowly, lightly tapping his foot to the rhythm, letting the music sink into his body. Then he rolled his shoulders with a gentle flow, as if he were waking up the beat inside him. Every movement was smooth, calm, and controlled. He wasn't showing off. He was warming up, building a moment. People began to clap softly in rhythm, creating a warm, friendly atmosphere. Evan felt his nerves melt into excitement. He stood close to his parents, watching with wide eyes. Michael took a small step forward, then another, then glided sideways with the effortless grace only he had. It looked like something simple, but the way he did it made the entire room lean in. His movements looked soft but powerful, simple yet full of meaning. It was like the music came from him, not the speaker. Then, he did something that made everyone laugh softly in delight. He repeated one of Evan's earlier moves, the slightly wobbly spin that Evan had done with all the courage he could gather. But Michael didn't copy it perfectly. He added a light, playful twist, a little smile, and a gentle nod in Evan's direction, as if saying, "I saw what you did, and I liked it." Evan's face lit up with surprise and joy. He couldn't believe the greatest dancer he'd ever known was repeating something he did. His heart swelled with happiness, and his feet almost lifted off the ground. The people around clapped louder now. They weren't cheering for perfection. They were cheering for the moment, the connection between a kid with a big dream and the man who inspired millions. Michael continued dancing, and the energy in the room grew brighter. He did a small glide across the floor, then a soft spin, then a quick, sharp step that made everyone cheer. But even then, he wasn't trying to overpower Evan or make him look small. Every move was light, joyful, and playful, like he was inviting Evan into a friendly game rather than a competition. Evan watched closely. He saw how Michael controlled his balance, how he moved his hands, how he stayed relaxed even while doing something impressive. Evan tried to imitate the shoulder roll, then tried a small step, though he stayed near his parents. Michael noticed. He turned his body slightly toward Evan and did a small movement. Evan could copy a simple sidestep, gentle and slow. It was an invitation. The crowd sensed it too and looked toward Evan, waiting to see if he would join again. Evan hesitated for half a second. His stomach felt fluttery, like butterflies were dancing inside him. But then he remembered how warm Michael's smile had been when he encouraged him earlier. He remembered how good it felt to express himself through dancing. And before he even knew it, his feet were moving again. He stepped forward. Michael nodded at him, matching his rhythm. Evan copied the step. The crowd cheered softly. Then, Michael added a gentle slide. Evan tried to copy it. His slide was short and a little uneven. But it didn't matter. Everyone cheered louder. At one point, Michael did a soft, slow-motion spin. Evan attempted it too. His turned out small and wobbly. But he didn't fall. The room burst into applause. Evan could feel his confidence rising with every clapping hand and every happy cheer. The mood in the room grew even warmer. People weren't simply watching a pop star dance, they were watching a shared moment between someone who had mastered the art and someone who was just beginning. Someone who admired him enough to try. Michael gently raised his hand, signaling a fun pause. Then he pointed to Evan, encouraging him to show something. Evan blinked, surprised. He didn't expect that. But he took a deep breath and moved his foot into the single dance move he felt safe with, a little hop slide he practiced at home. It wasn't fancy, but it came from his heart. Michael copied it immediately, but with his own signature charm. The room laughed with joy, not at Evan, but at how wholesome and playful the exchange was. Little by little, the two of them created a small dance conversation, a back and forth of steps and smiles. It wasn't a competition. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about sharing a moment of joy, passion, and courage. Evan felt like the world had slowed down just for him. Every time Michael smiled at him, he felt braver. Every time the crowd cheered, he felt stronger. And every time the music carried him, he felt free. The beat softened again, signaling the end of the playful challenge. Michael eased into his last step, a simple, graceful lean. Evan mimicked it, though his version was cute and crooked. But the applause that followed was loud, warm, and full of love. Michael walked over to him with a soft smile. "That was wonderful," he said, in a voice full of praise. Evan felt his face glow. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded shyly. Michael gently placed his hand on Evan's shoulder again. "You dance with heart," he said. "That's the most important part." Evan's parents beamed with pride. They took a few pictures, but even without pictures, the memory was bright enough to stay with them forever. The people in the room continued talking excitedly. Some said they had never seen Michael dance so playfully. Others said Evan was incredibly brave. A few crew members whispered how sweet it was to see the superstar welcome a child's challenge with such kindness. As the music faded and people gathered back into conversations, Evan felt like he was floating. Not because he thought he was better than anyone, but because he had done something he never thought he could. He had danced with his hero, and his hero had danced back. The moment didn't feel real. It felt like a dream he didn't want to wake from, but it was real, and it was only the beginning of a memory that would shape his heart for years to come. When the music faded and the cheering softened, the room settled into a kind of quiet excitement, the kind that comes right after something magical has taken place. Evan stood near his parents again, still catching his breath. His cheeks were warm, and his heart felt light, almost floating. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He had danced with Michael Jackson. Not just in his imagination. Not in his bedroom, where he practiced spins in front of a mirror this time. It was real. But the moment wasn't over yet. Michael straightened his hat and took a few slow steps toward the center of the room again. People began forming a loose circle without even being asked. It just happened naturally. There was something in the air, an expectation, a curiosity, a sense that something else was about to unfold. Michael glanced toward Evan, and the little boy felt a warm rush go through him. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't fear. It was like being invited into a moment bigger than himself. And even though Evan wasn't dancing right now, he felt included. Like this next moment was meant for him too. A crew member started the music again, but this time the beat was different, smooth, soft, but confident. It felt like the kind of rhythm that gently pulls you in without asking permission. Michael took one slow breath, and then he began to move. At first, he didn't do anything big. He slid one foot back, then forward, as if testing the floor. The motion was gentle, graceful. Almost like he was letting the music guide him instead of the other way around. Then he lifted his arm, letting it float in the air with so much ease that it almost didn't look real. His fingers curled softly, his wrist angled just right, and the simple movement immediately drew everyone's attention. People in the room grew quiet again. Even the ones who had been chattering non-stop after the playful dance-off now found themselves watching silently, captivated. The way Michael moved wasn't loud or showy. It was smooth, intentional, and full of feeling. Every tiny motion seemed to tell a story. Evan watched, his eyes wide. He could see something new now. something he hadn't noticed while watching videos. Michael didn't just move his body. He moved with a kind of emotion that made every step feel alive. It wasn't about copying a routine. It wasn't about doing moves fast or slow. It was about letting the music flow through him. Michael took a small step backward and then glided forward so smoothly that a few people in the room gasped. It was a tiny glide compared to his stage performances, but seeing it up close made it feel different, more personal, more magical. He followed it with a slow turn. Not a fast spin, not the kind Evan had tried earlier, but a gentle, controlled turn that almost looked like he was floating. His body never rushed. His movements were soft but full of skill. Everything he did felt meaningful. Then, in a moment that made the entire room smile, Michael mirrored Evan's earlier slide move. He didn't exaggerate it or turn it into something flashy. He kept it small, almost exactly as Evan had done, but with the polish of someone who had spent a lifetime perfecting the art of dancing. People laughed softly in appreciation, not because it was funny, but because it was sweet. It felt like Michael was still dancing with Evan, even though Evan wasn't in the center anymore. Evan covered his mouth with his hands, surprised and delighted. His parents exchanged a warm look, knowing their son would talk about this moment for years. Michael continued, easing into a series of gentle steps. He added a little shoulder pop, then smoothed it out into a slide. His body moved like it was made of music, like every beat was a guide, and he simply followed with trust. There was nothing rushed or forced about it. After a few more steps, he looked over at Evan again and did a small nod, almost as if asking, "You see this?" Evan nodded back automatically, not trusting himself to speak. His heart felt warm and full. He had admired Michael for years, but seeing him dance so close, so calm, so kind, so patient, made him understand something deep inside. Dancing wasn't just about steps. It was about feeling, expression, and connection. Michael finished the sequence with a smooth lean. It wasn't a big stage lean, just enough to make the room respond with soft applause. The crowd didn't erupt loudly. Instead, their applause carried a gentle appreciation, a respect for the moment more than the performance. But Michael wasn't done. He stepped closer to Evan again. The crowd parted a little, giving them space without needing to be told. Michael bent down slightly so he could look Evan right in the eyes. "You see how I let the music lead?" Michael said softly. Evan nodded, still speechless. "That's the secret," Michael continued. "You don't fight the music. You flow with it. You feel it first." Evan listened closely, every word sinking deep inside him. Michael placed his hand lightly on Evan's shoulder. "Do you want to try something simple? Together?" he asked, gently. Evan blinked in surprise. "Me?" he asked, pointing to himself. Michael smiled. "Yes, you." The crowd watched with warm, encouraging expressions. No one pressured Evan. No one stared too hard. They simply waited, ready to enjoy whatever happened next. Michael demonstrated a tiny move, something easy, something simple. He stepped forward with a soft tap, then gently slid his foot back. It was small, almost like the beginning of the moonwalk, but not quite. More like the foundation of a dance step he wanted Evan to understand. Evan took a deep breath and tried it. His first attempt was clumsy, but he didn't stop. He tried again. Michael guided him with his hands, adjusting his posture gently and giving him small hints. "That's it," Michael said softly. "Don't rush. Feel it." Evan tried again, this time focusing on the music instead of just the move. And slowly, very slowly, the step became smoother. Not perfect, but real. The room applauded again, soft and supportive. Michael smiled proudly. "See? You're learning already." Evan felt joy spread through his chest. He felt proud, taken seriously, inspired. And he felt something else too, like he was being taught by someone who cared. Not just a famous person, not just an admired artist, but someone who truly enjoyed teaching and sharing. Michael then showed him how to start a spin. He didn't ask Evan to do a full spin this time. He simply taught him how to place his foot, how to shift his weight, how to keep his balance from the start. Evan listened carefully, concentrating so hard that his tongue poked out slightly, which made a few people chuckle quietly. "That's good," Michael said warmly. "You're focused. That's how dancers grow." For a moment, it didn't feel like a backstage meet and greet anymore. It felt like a private lesson, just Michael and a kid with big dreams. After practicing a few small steps, Michael patted Evan's back gently. "You did great," he said. "Really great. Really great." Evan felt his eyes sting slightly with emotion, but he blinked it away. He didn't want to miss a single second of the moment. Michael stood up again and addressed the group with a smile. "He's got a bright future," he said playfully, pointing at Evan. The whole room clapped again, this time louder, full of warmth and admiration not only for Michael, but for the brave little kid who had stepped forward earlier. The music faded one last time, but the feeling in the room stayed warm and alive. People talked excitedly, complimenting Evan, praising Michael's kindness, sharing how moved they were by what they had seen. Evan's parents hugged him proudly. Evan hugged them back, still in a daze. He had danced in front of his hero. His hero had danced with him. And now, his hero had taught him something precious. The moment didn't just feel special, it felt life-changing. And deep inside, Evan knew one thing for sure. This was going to stay in his heart forever. The room had slowly returned to its normal flow of chatter, laughter, and light music. But the energy was different now. It felt softer, kinder, more connected. People were no longer just excited fans gathered after a concert, they were witnesses to a moment that touched their hearts. Some were still smiling. Others were whispering to each other about how sweet the dance exchange had been. And right in the middle of that warm atmosphere stood Evan, holding on to a feeling he couldn't even describe. Evan's heart was still beating fast. Not in a nervous way anymore, but in a happy, glowing way. His mom kept holding his shoulders proudly, and his dad kept giving him quick pats on the back. They looked like they wanted to hug him again and again, but they were also trying not to overwhelm him. It was clear they were almost bursting with pride. Michael, who had joined a small group of fans, glanced back toward Evan from time to time. Every time his eyes landed on the boy, he smiled warmly, as if he was remembering how brave Evan had been. After finishing with a couple of autographs and taking a few pictures, he gently excused himself from the group and walked back toward Evan. People moved aside naturally, creating a soft path for him, and Evan felt his stomach flutter all over again. Not in fear this time, just in awe. Even though he'd danced in front of Michael and learned from him, it still amazed him that someone like Michael would take time for a kid like him. Michael stopped right in front of him and kneeled down slightly so he could talk at eye level, just like a teacher speaking to a student he truly believed in. "You danced really well today," Michael said softly. "But what I liked most wasn't the steps. It was your courage." Michael said, "I won town. I won taps last a building. 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 I won taps last a building." Evan blinked shyly. "Really?" he asked, almost whispering. "Really," Michael said with a nod. "A lot of people love dancing, but not everyone is brave enough to step into the middle of the room and try. You did that. That's special." Evan looked down for a moment, trying to hide his smile, but he couldn't help it. The corners of his mouth kept lifting. He felt proud in a way he had never felt before. Michael continued, "And when you dance with your heart. That's something no one can teach. You already have it." Evan's parents watched quietly, grateful for the kindness in Michael's voice. They knew their son had always loved dancing, But hearing these words from someone he admired so deeply meant more than they could express. Then Michael said something that made Evan's eyes widen. "I want to show you a simple trick," he said. "It helped me when I was your age." "Eights?" Evan quickly nodded, excited. Michael stood up and motioned toward a small, open space on the floor. Evan followed him. People stepped back to give them room again, forming a circle. But this time, the energy felt almost like a friendly classroom. Everyone watched closely, but not with pressure, not with judgment, just with warmth and curiosity. Michael looked down at Evan and said, "Remember when you did your spin earlier?" Evan nodded, feeling a little shy. "It was good," Michael said gently. "But I want to show you how to make it smoother." He took a step forward, placing his foot in a precise but relaxed position. "The secret is starting small," he explained. "You don't need to turn fast right away. Just find your balance first. We. He showed Evan how to shift his weight onto one foot while gently lifting the other. "See? You don't rush into it. You let your body get ready." Evan copied the stance. His first try was a little shaky, but Michael helped steady him by adjusting his shoulder gently. "There you go," Michael said. "Much better." Then Michael demonstrated a tiny turn, just a quarter of a spin. Not dramatic, not fast, just smooth. "That's the beginning," he said. "It doesn't matter how big the turn is. What matters is how steady you feel." Evan tried it. He did a small turn, slower than his earlier spins, but this one felt different. It felt controlled, balanced, real. "You did it," Michael said proudly. "See how smooth that was?" Evan nodded excitedly. He wanted to try again, and he did. Each attempt was slightly better. Michael smiled warmly. "You learn fast. That's a good sign." Evan felt a deep happiness spread through him. He wanted to dance more, to learn more, to move in ways he never had before. He felt like he had opened a new door inside himself. Michael then crouched down again, this time showing Evan how to position his feet for the beginning of a moonwalk. Not the full move, not yet, but the part that helped a dancer understand the feeling of sliding backward. "Watch your weight," Michael explained. "Shift gently. Too much pressure, and the slide stops. Too little, and it feels awkward. You want it right in the middle." He demonstrated slowly, and even the simple demonstration made people smile. It was just so smooth, so natural. Evan tried. His first attempt wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad either. He felt a tiny slide, just a small one. But when he looked up, Michael nodded proudly. "That's how it starts," Michael said. "Every dancer takes small steps before the big ones." Evan's parents clapped softly along with the others. The whole room felt warm, like a giant family cheering for one kid. Michael looked at Evan with a gentle expression. "Dancing isn't about being perfect. It's about your heart. If you love it, you'll get better every day." Evan listened closely, soaking in each word. "And remember," Michael continued, "never compare yourself to others. Everyone has their own path. Your steps, your mistakes, your progress, it all belongs to you. Honor it." Evan nodded slowly. Those words felt important, like something he would remember forever. Michael stood up, and Evan suddenly wrapped his arms around him in a small, tight hug. His parents gasped softly, not sure if it was appropriate. But before they could say anything, Michael hugged him back gently. "You're going to do great things," he whispered kindly. When they pulled away, Evan felt a glow in his chest that no words could describe. It felt like encouragement, inspiration, and hope, all mixed together. Michael then looked to the crowd and smiled warmly. "Everyone starts somewhere," he said gently, "and it's our job to lift each other up." The room applauded, touched by his words. A few fans asked Michael for final pictures. He took them kindly, still glancing at Evan every so often with a warm smile. Evan stood near his parents, feeling taller somehow, as if the moment had changed something inside him. He didn't feel like just a kid who liked dancing. He felt like someone who had been told they could become something more. As people slowly began to leave, many stopped to pat Evan on the shoulder or tell him how brave he was. Some adults said he inspired them. Some kids said they wished they could do what he did. Every word made Evan's heart grow a little brighter. When it was finally time to go, Evan looked back at the room one last time. The bright lights, the soft music, the crowd, and most of all, Michael. It all felt like a beautiful memory painted inside his mind. As they walked toward the exit, Evan held his parents' hands but kept turning back, not wanting the night to end. His mom leaned down and whispered, "You did something amazing today." His dad added, "And you learned from the best." Evan smiled up at them. "He was so nice," he said softly. "More than just dancing," his mom said with a smile. Evan nodded. He knew it was true. He didn't just learn dance moves tonight. He learned confidence. He learned kindness. He learned that dreams become real when you are brave enough to step forward. And as they walked out into the cool night air, Evan felt something deep inside, a gentle promise to himself. He would dance again. He would practice. He would grow. Because tonight, he had been shown that even the smallest spark could turn into something bright. And he wasn't going to let that spark fade. The night air felt cool against Evan's cheeks as he and his parents stepped outside the concert arena. The lights from the building glowed behind them, but Evan still felt like he was glowing brighter. His steps were lighter, almost like he was still dancing inside. He kept looking down at his shoes, then at his hands, as if they now held some kind of magic he didn't have before. His parents walked beside him quietly at first, giving him space to enjoy the moment. They knew he was replaying everything in his mind. The dancing, the cheers, the warmth in the room, the lessons from Michael, all of it blended into a memory he would treasure forever. When they reached the car, Evan climbed into the back seat and leaned his head against the window. He watched people walking out of the arena, laughing and talking excitedly about the show. But Evan wasn't thinking about the performance anymore. His mind kept returning to the moment Michael had placed a hand on his shoulder. The soft guidance, the kind words, the little dance lesson. It all felt unbelievable, like a story he might have dreamed up if it hadn't been so real. On the ride home, his dad glanced in the rearview mirror and said, "You know, I think Michael really liked you." Evan smiled shyly. "Do you think so?" "I'm sure of it," his dad replied. "He wouldn't have spent so much time with you if he didn't." His mom added, "You showed him your heart. That's what made him notice." Evan sat up straighter. He hadn't really thought about it like that. He had only wanted to dance, to show what he felt inside. He didn't try to impress anyone. He just followed the music the way he always did when he was alone in his room. And somehow, that was enough. When they got home, Evan's grandparents were waiting, eager to hear everything. They had stayed up late just to see him. As soon as he walked through the door, they rushed to him with wide smiles. "How was it?" his grandmother asked. Evan took a deep breath and began telling the story the moment he told Michael he could dance, the crowd gathering around him, the music playing, and how he started moving even though his knees felt shaky. He told them about Michael's playful moves, about how he mirrored the steps Evan did, and about the small tips Michael gave him for spinning and gliding. His grandparents listened as if they were hearing a fairy tale come to life. When he finished, his grandmother hugged him tightly and said, "You were brave, my dear. So brave." His grandfather nodded firmly. "And you made a memory you will carry forever." That night, after everyone went to bed, Evan lay awake in his room staring at the ceiling. He wasn't tired at all. The excitement still danced inside him like a soft, glowing light. He replayed Michael's words over and over again. "You dance with your heart. That sentence settled deep into him. He wasn't sure why it meant so much, but it did. It felt like a truth he had always known but never fully understood. Maybe dancing wasn't about being perfect. Maybe it wasn't even about being the best. Maybe it was about letting your heart speak without using words. He turned onto his side and smiled. He felt different now, stronger, braver, more inspired. He closed his eyes, letting the glowing warmth inside him lull him to sleep. The next morning, Evan woke with the same rush of excitement he had gone to bed with. As soon as he got dressed, he went to the living room, where there was just enough space for him to practice. He didn't even put on music at first. He just stood there, remembering the gentle way Michael had shifted his weight, the soft movement of his feet, the relaxed posture of his shoulders. He tried the simple glide Michael had shown him. Then, the quarter turn. Then, the subtle slide that was the beginning of the moonwalk. He didn't get everything right, but he didn't feel frustrated. Instead, he felt hopeful. Every small improvement felt like a little victory. His mom walked in quietly and watched for a moment before speaking. "You're already practicing?" Evan nodded. "I want to get better." She smiled. "Then you will." And Evan believed her. In the days that followed, Evan couldn't stop thinking about dance. He practiced before school, after school, and sometimes even in between homework sessions. He watched videos of dancers, not just Michael, but others too. He studied their footwork, their posture, their expressions. But he didn't try to copy everything. He remembered what Michael had said. Everyone has their own path. So Evan tried to find his own style, simple, smooth, and full of expression. He would use small moves with big feeling, slow steps with meaningful rhythm. He wanted each movement to speak from his heart. One evening, his parents sat him down and said, "We've been thinking, would you like to join a dance class?" Evan's eyes sparkled. Yes. They signed him up for a local studio, and from the moment he stepped into the training room, Evan knew he belonged there. The wooden floors, the mirrors, the warm-up music, it all felt like a new world opening for him. At first, he felt nervous. There were other kids his age, some of them already knowing fancy steps or flexible moves. Evan worried if he was good enough. But then he remembered another one of Michael's lessons. Don't compare yourself to others. So he didn't. He followed the teacher carefully, learned the basics, and poured his feelings into each movement. He didn't rush. He didn't try to outdo anyone. He simply enjoyed the process. And slowly, he began to shine. His teacher noticed how quickly Evan picked up rhythms. She noticed how he danced with emotion, how he wasn't afraid to try new things, and how he always smiled when he felt the music. She praised him often, which made his confidence grow even more. At home, his parents would sometimes peek into the living room and watch him practicing with full focus. His grandmother would clap softly after every little routine he finished. His grandfather once said, "I think you found your gift." And Evan felt it too. Months passed, and the dance studio announced a small recital. Each student would perform a short routine in front of parents and friends. At first, Evan felt that familiar flutter in his stomach. He remembered how nervous he had been before dancing in front of Michael, but he reminded himself of how good it felt when he finally did it. The night of the recital arrived, and Evan stood backstage watching other kids perform. When it was his turn, he took a deep breath and walked to the middle of the stage. The lights were warm on his face. The music began, and Evan let go. He moved gently, smoothly, with emotion in every step. He didn't try to be fancy. He just danced with honesty. His spins were steadier now. His slides had smoother flow. His balance was stronger. When he finished, the audience applauded warmly. As he walked off stage, he imagined Michael watching somewhere, smiling the same gentle smile he had seen backstage at the concert. After the show, one of the parents approached Evan. "You dance beautifully," she said. "So natural and full of feeling." Evan smiled shyly and said, "Thank you." He didn't brag or boast. He just felt proud, quietly, deeply. As the years went by, Evan continued dancing. He performed at school events, local shows, community festivals, and even competitions. Each time he stepped on stage, he remembered that night with Michael. He remembered the kindness, the encouragement, the small lessons that weren't small at all. He grew older, stronger, and more skilled. But he never forgot the most important things he learned. Dance with your heart. Be kind. Be brave. Let the music lead you. And always believe in your spark. Whenever someone asked him how he started dancing, Evan always smiled and said, "One day, I challenged someone very special." And he accepted. And each time he said it, the memory came back as bright as ever: the music, the room, the cheers, the warmth. That one night didn't make Evan famous. It did something better. It changed his life. It gave him direction. It gave him confidence. It gave him purpose. And most of all, it gave him a story, a beautiful story, about courage, kindness, and the moment when a kid danced with a legend and discovered the strength inside his own heart.